Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our YouTube Live. My name is Catherine Thomas, and I am the Executive Director and founder of Yoga for Change. And with me today is the amazing Megan and Jamie. Thank you, ladies, so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Just to give a little bit of introduction about Yoga for Change. Yoga for Change was started in 2014 with the goal of bringing resources to individuals who've experienced trauma, specifically veterans, incarcerated individuals, youth, and those in recovery. So when I started the program back in 2014, I was lucky enough to start at the Community Transition Center. And at the Community Transition Center, offering those classes is actually when I first met Jamie. Jamie was in one of my first cohort of women's students, which is really cool. And Megan, I didn't meet until later, but more in recovery in that area. But interesting fact about Megan went through Yoga for Change's teacher training and is now a teacher on the teaching team. And Jamie is now currently one of our board members. So it's really cool. Jamie's my boss and Megan is on our team. So I'm really excited to conduct like a little bit of questionnaire. Please feel free to comment in the little question chat box. I'm watching it, and so we'll try to get any questions you have answered. So ladies, are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Megan, why don't you start? Can you kind of give us a little bit of snapshot into your life leading up to your first yoga class, talking about, what life was like for you, and then really kind of going into that, walking into that first class.
Okay, sure. So from a young age, I was, I grew up in poverty. And I experienced some childhood sexual traumas and different other traumas that kind of led to me feeling like I was less than and feeling like I wasn't really worth much, I guess. I found drugs, which then my entire life kind of revolved around getting and keeping those drugs because I didn't want to feel those feelings anymore. And it felt safer for me to be in this kind of drug numb haze than for me to actually be in my body and moving through my life. So that's an additional 15 years of my life was just basically going to try and find drugs and use drugs in any way, shape, or form. So I experienced more traumas while I was going through my addiction, as well as I've been incarcerated, I think 3 times, but there could be more because I don't know. I'm pretty sure I've been in jail 3 times. There's more arrests, but I've only been in jail three times. Don't hold me to that though. Don't quote me on that. That could be wrong. And then finally in the last time I was in jail, I went to CTC, which is the program that Yoga for Change taught at. And I did the Matrix program, which is a cognitive behavioral therapy, drug rehabilitation type of program where you're still incarcerated, but you're experiencing recovery programming. And I did Yoga for Change and kind of walking into that class. Honestly, that first class, it was just so that I didn't have to be in my dorm. I didn't want to have to sit in that big behind room and just not have anything to do or just be bored. You weren't allowed to exercise. You weren't allowed to move too much because then that's against the rules. So that was the only way that I could get any kind of physical release. So that's kind of my first experience with Yoga for Change. Was haha, I felt like I was kind of figuring a way out.
So question about incarceration, and Jamie, chime in obviously with your experience, but what is it like going through being arrested and then getting to your first program? What's that experience like? I personally I've never been incarcerated, and I don't actually understand or have an awareness. And so if you could kind of, if you don't mind discussing sort of what that's like, because that's traumatic in of itself. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
was laughing a little bit about what Megan was saying about as far as like being in the dorm and like signing up for any opportunity that like got you out of it. It was that was like a similar reason why I signed up for Yoga for Change. For me, the process of, you know, being arrested was pretty traumatic in of itself. I was at a point in my life where I was being criminalized for my victimization. I was being trafficked um, while all these arrests were occurring. There would be times when the officer would even engage with my trafficker, and then I would be the one who was going to jail instead of him, which even in all of that like chaos, I was like, there's something very wrong about this. And so the process of like getting booked, you know, I'd get booked, and then you know, I'd be in for a few days, and then I would get out, and then he'd be right there to pick me up. And so it was just like this cycle that I couldn't get out of. Like every time I went in, there was nothing for me to come out into, and he would be there waiting, knowing that there was nothing else for me. So I think what people forget is that just being incarcerated, just being arrested is a traumatic experience.
Mm.
That you're experiencing trauma like every minute that you're locked up and you don't have freedom. And, you know, finally getting into a place where I was in programming and there was an option for me when I got out was super important. Um, and even more than that, it was about finding programming that was trauma informed, that understood that every minute I was in there, there was trauma and I needed coping skills like right then, like just to survive the experience of being incarcerated. And that's what Yoga for Change really did for me was when I was in classes, you know, even though my motives for signing up may have not been like pure, but when I was in classes, it was just, I could step out of this like mentality I had to have to survive in jails. I could just connect with my humanness. I could start to mourn what happened to me, and really start to feel those emotions. And, you know, that's the thing with healing. Like the only way to get over the pain is to go through the pain. And Yoga for Change was the first experience where I let my guards down and just let those emotions like bubble up. And then when I left those classes, I was given tools, you know, I was told things like, no one can take your breath away. You have your breath no matter where you're at. And that was so important. So just to get through those really difficult moments while you're being incarcerated, you know, for whatever reason you're having difficult moments, like I always remember I have my breath, you know. And when I got out, that was something that stayed with me. Like I have my breath no matter where I'm at, I have that. And now I have like seasonal allergies and I get really frustrated when like I get like congested. I'm like, I need my breath. So
Yeah, and I actually I really remember, I remember Jamie walking into the class. I just, like, to be really frank, I remember, and there's students that I will never, like, there'll be students I'll never forget. Like there's Matthew Horn, because he's no longer on this earth. I will never forget Matthew Horn. And Jamie, although we're in a completely different situation, our relationship, I remember you and your friend who you brought with you to come. And I think that the example of your trafficker being there to pick you up after you were released from incarceration because of your arrest due to being involved in being trafficked. I mean, being trafficked. I think that kind of puts a new spin on everything, where a lot of individuals say, well, why don't they just leave that lifestyle? And for us to say that, I think that is 100% our privilege to say, like, well, why don't they leave that? It's because you don't understand what's happening on the other side of that person's experience. Like, you're not willing to listen and to see. And so I just wanted to kind of state that it's really interesting to hear that perspective and to be able to sit and to listen and not to bring any judgment into that, just because I had not heard that your trafficker was there present to pick you up for that many times after arrest. So it's like, shake it out a little bit.
take it off.
Whew, yeah. Jamie, if you don't mind talking, do you remember your first yoga class?
I remember classes. I don't even know if I like remember the first day, but I remember sitting in this like trailer that like I didn't even know existed. It was like on like the campus, but it wasn't for us. I'm like, well, it's in the jail, like why isn't it for us? And so I guess that's where they were allowing you to be. And it was full of, I mean, just chairs and just random things. It was kind of like dark. I like remember that. And I have some like really distinct memories of like trying to do crow pose. And I remember, and I don't know if this was my first class or not, we did some yoga poses that really engaged like the hips. And I remember just like tears streaming down. And I was like, where is that even coming from? And then like Catherine explaining like the hips hold emotion. And so like those are the things I remember. I also remember Catherine telling her story, which was really impactful. We had a lot of people come in and out to do programs, and not very many of them were like invested in connecting on a human level. And I think when you're with a group of people who obviously have stories to tell, like leading with your own story, like brings down walls. So I remember Catherine telling her story and empathizing, saying like, I was only a few steps away from possibly being where you guys were. And, you know, I was lucky not to have that experience, but there wasn't too many people who came in who were in different life circumstances than us that were able to kind of like take those blinders off and say, I'm the same as you, you're the same as me. Like our lives have handed us different sets of cards. So
Yeah. What misconceptions did you think about what the yoga class would be and what it actually was, if you don't mind, and then either one of you just jump right in.
Megan, I've been speaking for a minute. You're more than welcome to lead with this one.
I was like, you got it, girl. So I don't know. I went into the yoga class. I guess I was thinking that it was going to be all like everybody just sit around.
We might have some technical difficulties. Hang on. She's going to come back. It's going to be like her mouth will move and all the worlds will catch up with her. Okay. Well, in the meantime, Jamie, until she cuts you off, what were your misconceptions about what you thought it was going to be and what it actually was, the yoga class?
Yeah, I definitely thought I had never done yoga before. It was a brand new experience. And so, there she is.
Really,
She's singing.
just really what I was going into.
Oh, and then she's gone.
She's
Okay.
gone. Okay.
She'll come back in. We'll catch it out. Okay. So what was your experience about the first yoga class and then what was it actually?
Yeah. So I really thought it was going to be like Zen and maybe doing stuff that I didn't think my body could do. Oh, look, she's coming. I guess I thought it would be fluff. I thought it would be kind of like a fluff thing in my day, and I didn't really know. And if I didn't like it, then I wasn't going to come back. And it just wasn't any of that. It was exactly what I needed. Hey, Megan.
I'm back.
Welcome back. So Megan, can you redo your answer? Because you kind of faded out. So the question is, what did you think it was going to be? And then what actually happened in the first yoga class?
So I caught on to the very last part of what Jamie was saying as far as thinking that it was going to be fluff. And that's kind of how I felt. I thought I was just going to go in there and I don't really know. I did have some experience with Pilates. So I was kind of like, okay, this is going to be like Pilates, but in jail. And then it was not. It was very, it wasn't like, okay, now work. It was like, okay, now breathe, move, be aware of what's going on in your body, be aware of what is going on around you, know that we've created a secure space and that you're okay to kind of feel the feelings that might pop up, they may or may not pop up. It's okay regardless. It's just, it was such a freeing experience for me to be able to kind of give myself permission to feel emotions.
And so what did you, and then this is a question for both of you, what did you take from what you learned about yourself in the yoga class? What did you take out or use in your own life? And I know, Jamie, you said breath, but is there anything else besides for that, or and Megan, you as well, that you are taking and actively utilizing in your life?
Obviously there was like that practical like breath work skill that I learned, but I also, as much as it was about like Catherine connecting, to us as human beings, was also like reconnecting with myself as a human being. I think, and I don't even think like science like backs this up, when you're living in trauma, like you just have to shut down, you have to disassociate, you have to become almost not human to survive. And it was, over the years, since those classes, I've done a lot of work on reconnecting with my body, like reconnecting with myself. But that was my like first little tryout of it. It was like, what does it feel like to be back in my body? What does it feel like to be back in my mind in a healthy way, and not just like anxiety, like tormenting every brain cell I had. So it was like learning that I didn't even know that I needed to reconnect with my body. I didn't know that like I needed like my brain to be properly functioning. And so it was the first taste of that. And then I've done yoga and other practices ever since then, because it has to be an intentional process when you experience that much trauma. It's not a couple yoga classes and then it's done. It's trauma's chronic and long term. And but I wouldn't have known that I needed to take those paths in therapy and take those paths with alternative medicines if it wasn't for yoga, and yoga for change specifically.
And I actually think what you said was really interesting. There is actual science to back up the social disconnection is social connection is the opposite of addiction, not sobriety. So by isolating ourselves and trying to push the trauma away and to avoid the trauma, that really is how people are dealing. And many people, reach for pills. I personally reach for work. And so like as an avoidance technique. So I totally understand what you're saying. And then Megan, if you don't mind answering that question also, what skills did you take out after your class?
First, I wanted to touch on something that Jamie had said as far as what it felt like to be back in my body. Ooh, that gave me chills. Like, yes, I am currently in counseling where I'm working through like how I had disassociated, how trauma had affected me as a person, and how I deal with the world around me. So that definitely, I didn't even realize that was a kind of a direct reaction from me doing yoga, was me being able to actually feel my body, which I was never present enough to actually be able to do. So that in and of itself, I don't have panic attacks like I used to. I don't have the urge to go out and reach out for something that'll make me feel differently. And one of the things that I have taken away from the practice is that I have to make myself a priority. I have to allow space for my growth right where it is. And that's something that I believe came specifically from Yoga for Change, because of the way that it is taught creates space for you to be okay with where you are. And you don't have to try and compete with the person on the mat next to you. You don't have to try and be more, or, there's no real expectations. It's just show up practice, breathe, and I think I've taken that elsewhere as well.
I like that. I'm writing that down. The way it's taught allows students to be okay with wherever they are. Like, and that is, I think, really a lot deeper than not that you intended it to be, but for me, it's impacting me because it's like, because Jamie, when you were talking, you were saying like it got you out of being incarcerated for that hour, right? It's wherever you are. For physically limited individuals, like veterans with with amputations, it allows them to still be physically moving throughout, no matter, even if it is just the residual limb, they're still able to move that residual limb where they are. If you have children who are incarcerated, we're allowing them to be kids where they are, no matter where they are. So I think that that's really important because it does actually lead, and we have a couple of questions from the audience if you guys will. So these are unprepped questions. At what point did you both realize you wanted to be a part of Yoga for Change in a bigger way?
For me, I feel like even, I think, yeah, I saw Catherine when I got out of incarceration, and she worked so hard to get me connected to a yoga studio outside of incarceration, because like once I left, I was living in a halfway house, I wasn't even working yet. Like, how am I going to go sign up for yoga classes? What was I going to do? And so I remember her coming to pick me up from like the downtown bus station and taking me out to a yoga class at the beach, where she got me like, I don't remember exactly what the arrangement was, but I could go there and do yoga and it wasn't going to come at a cost to myself. And I just thought that was so, so special. Even before this call, Catherine was kind of talking about like, Megan and I don't look like the people who we were like when we first met. And Catherine took a risk, by coming to pick me up. And I sometimes am a risk taker myself, and I like appreciated that. And then just through where my career led and, how my life has changed, Catherine and I just kept ending up in the same places like over and over again. And it just like clicked one day. It's like, we went for coffee and it was like, all right, how can we, kind of formalize this relationship? And she extended an offer for me to join the board. And that's a value that I hold deeply. I do a lot of trainings on how to increase survivor voice. And a big thing that I say, and this is usually in the anti-trafficking kind of world, is you need to have people who have had that lived experience on your board. Like, you have to have it. And I don't even think I've ever said those words to Catherine, but like, she saw that. She saw, I need to have a student, someone who's been through programming, come be on the board, because they're going to impact how the organization makes decisions. So it's such an honor and privilege to be in that position, and to really, I care about the organization so, so much. It's like so deeply personal to me. And I want, anyone who's incarcerated and the other ways we impact the community to be able to have access to Yoga for Change. And I get to be a part of helping it grow to see that happen.
And just one second, Megan, before you jump in, I just wanted you to kind of also talk about where we see growth as an organization. I think we have a lot of work to do as an organization to include more voices. I know that right now we have some former students on the board, or some former students who are teachers, which is great, because I never want to speak for an experience that I personally have not gone through. So I do appreciate the fact that we are going in the direction that I hope the organization is going to continue to go. And what's also great is it allows more diverse ideas to ensure that we're allowing students to be okay with where they are, no matter where they are. And because we don't know what it's like I don't know what it's like to be incarcerated, but also Jamie and Megan don't know what it's like to be in the military. So it kind of balances out that too. So your turn, Miss Megan. Why are you, when did you decide you want to be part of the Yoga for Change team in a bigger way?
I know when I first went to the yoga class in the jail, I was not in great shape. I had put on a lot of weight because I was an intravenous drug user. Like, I should have been a statistic. There's no reason that I should be here other than apparently there's something here for me. So when I first went to that first yoga class, I felt like I was good at something. Like, I did that class and I was like, oh man, I killed that. And then I mean, it had been a really long time since there had been anything in my life that I was like, man, I crushed that. And so I did well there and it felt good and I liked feeling good. And then I still went back out. I went back to the same routines. I went to another rehab. Yoga for Change was at that rehab. And then I still went back out. And then I went to another rehab. Guess who was there? Yoga for Change. So I was like, all right, fine, screw it. Okay, I'm going to actually do a yoga practice. I'm going to try. I'm going to move through it. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to practice on my own, even when Yoga for Change isn't here. And then I also found out that there was a way for former students to become teachers. And I was like, that's for me.
Yeah, you couldn't get away from us.
No.
You kept showing up where you were. We were stalking you specifically, Megan, right? We were stalking you. We're like, where's she going to be next?
You found me.
Yeah. But you know what? I think that what's really interesting is it's two completely different ways, and everybody's story is their own story. And it doesn't matter how many times you go to a, rehab center or how many times you get incarcerated. Like, you have to choose, like what you said, Megan, like finally, like, okay, fine. Okay. Darn it. Like that kind of thing. And I think that's really powerful. So we have a couple other questions from the audience. Thank you all for asking. Why do you think yoga is so effective in creating seeds of change on an individual level? Why do you think yoga is so effective creating seeds of change on an individual level?
I think for me personally, it allowed me to see that there was a safe space for me to feel my emotions, and that space was in my body.
Yeah, that's your turn, Jamie.
I mean,
awesome.
I would echo that so much. It's whatever, when you're reaching for external stuff to fill some need, and inevitably those things backfire on you, at some point you have to realize that, like, everything you need is actually within yourself. And I think yoga is really great about teaching that if you need strength today, the strength is in you. If you need joy today, the joy is in you. If you need a day to be an emotional wreck, then you can, like, pull that out of yourself and experience that. And I think that's something that's lacking in a lot of, like, recovery or, like, even counseling based therapies is, we're taught to reach out to other people or, go to a therapy session. But I think those things aren't accessible 24/7. And it's really about, I think yoga takes that focus away from, you have to find something external to meet your needs, to saying, like, what you need to meet your needs is within you.
Kind of expanding on that idea, what are some misconceptions you think the community has of current Yoga for Change students? What are some misconceptions you think the community has for current Yoga for Change students or about them?
I don't really have any personal experience with any misconceptions. Everywhere that I go is kind of very accepting of Yoga for Change, and they're like, "Oh, you do Yoga for Change? Awesome!" So I don't have like a negative experience with it. I say, "Hey, I was a student and now I work for Yoga for Change." They're like, "Awesome!" And I'm like, "Awesome!" So
Jamie, do you agree, or you got anything different?
Yeah, I would say more broadly, I don't run into, I think, misconceptions necessarily about Yoga for Change, but about those populations, people with substance use disorder, or who are incarcerated, or vulnerable youth. And I worked in youth advocacy for a few years. Um, there is so much victim blaming and so much like the expectations for those kids or for someone who's incarcerated um, are so low. And also, whatever you did to get in your situation, it's also your fault. So we don't expect much from you, and you deserve like what happened. You're like, you deserve to be in whatever circumstance because you did it to yourself. And um, I would say, like, if you sit down with anyone from any of our populations and you just hear their personal story, you will find that, there's cycles of poverty, there's cycles of trauma, there's all these other forces that, when people have like one bad choice or another bad choice, it's not like they had like a good choice to make in it. So I think that, so the conception of choice, I think gets really like blurry is, um, let's say like a kid runs away from home. Like if their home is abusive and if they were on juvenile justice probation, then when they come back, they know that they're going back to juvenile justice program. So what the choices are to stay on the run and have horrific, awful things happen to you, or to come back home and then have horrific things happen to you, or come back and be locked back up and have horrific things happen to you. It's like, where's the like good choice in all that? This is my son.
Hi.
I'm glad it's like COVID and everyone's like used to this kind of stuff. Can I finish up my call? No. Okay.
So I appreciate that answer, and I think even more expanding on it, it's sort of like for us and for how I would answer one of the questions is like, why do you think yoga is so effective? I think why Yoga for Change is so effective is because we base everything in choice. And so what I mean by that is if you participate in the class, you get to choose what that looks like, even if you're sentenced to it through the correctional system, even if it's mandated through the programming. And so that allows individuals then to learn like, oh, I actually have a choice over my body does, even though I don't necessarily have a choice of where my body is. Like in this facility, I still have a way to move it and to do that and to move it into choice. And so I think that's for us something that we really, and I appreciate you saying it completely in a different way, but sort of bringing it back to Yoga for Change programming. I think it's interesting to say that like kids, sometimes they don't have a choice. Like sometimes people don't have a choice. Like Jamie, I honestly believe like you did not have a choice to live like at points in your life you may have, but the majority of your experience was kind of like in that point, unless somebody from the outside can say, yeah, you had a choice. Well, we don't really know what your life is like. So kind of putting it out there really allows us to more see what's going on and that kind of thing. Did that bring up anything for either of you? No.
I think when you're doing trauma work and like why yoga is like trauma informed or trauma competent is because it does understand that you're going to populations who have had so limited choice or choice taken away from them, and then you're helping them find new ways to find what's a good choice in this moment. Like, so it's like, I know that you've had so limited choices, but now like no matter what circumstance you're in, you have at least one good choice you can make. You can breathe. Like, so
yeah.
And that's where it starts.
Yes. What is your advice to people, especially those who are experiencing trauma and are hesitant about trying out yoga? I can start that answer so you can guys think of your answer. So the question again is, what is your advice to people, especially who have experienced trauma and are hesitant about trying yoga? My advice is, it doesn't matter what it looks like, right? It doesn't matter what it looks like because everyone is concerned about what it looks like. So nobody's watching you, kind of thing. And you don't need to touch your toes to do yoga. You can just bend your knees. That's my 2 parts of advice. Nobody's looking at you and you just bend your knees when appropriate.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I like your pieces of advice. I like just try it. See if it works for you. If it doesn't, keep trying stuff until you can work through your trauma. Just don't give up. It doesn't have to be yoga that works for you. It can be something else. Just don't give up.
And there's a lot of types of yoga.
That's true.
It was like, so just because you went to one yoga class and it was hot and you're like, I don't want to sweat, doesn't mean that all the types of yoga are like that. So,
yes, good point.
what about you, Miss Jamie?
And yeah, I mean, for someone who has experienced trauma, if like social anxiety is like a thing that makes it difficult for you to try something new, like invite a friend, like invite a supporting person to go along with you. You know, that's just like one piece of easy practical advice. If you're afraid of trying something new, you don't have to do it alone. You can take someone with you.
Yeah, and even for me, I like it. Like my husband, my partner, he was going to yoga because I also like going into a new space where you don't know what it's going to be like, and you don't know if you're wearing the right clothes or if you have the right yoga mat. I mean, all those added on to just like then on top of trauma, like that is overwhelming, right? So I would definitely, if you're brand new to yoga and you have a lot of trauma, I would make a point to maybe not share your, like, you don't have to share your story with anyone you don't want to share your story with, but just to let the teacher know, because there's not necessarily 100% of teachers are not 100% trauma informed. And so you may actually have a negative experience in the yoga class depending on who the teacher is. So if you have a lot of trauma, I would really, I mean, first you can email us and we would definitely like recommend some places or some community classes or even our YouTube station that has a great selection. But there is a link between individuals who have trauma being potentially triggered in a yoga class, which, you know, for us as an organization, that's not the best place to be. I think, Megan, do you have an experience that where you like were triggered potentially in a yoga class? Or
I have had quite a few experiences with being triggered in yoga classes, not even realizing that I was being triggered in a yoga class and just trying to kind of fight through it. And then at the end of it, I ended up being very disoriented and it was kind of scary. So definitely as a disclaimer, there can be things that pop up, and especially when you're opening yourself up to, like, you're opening hip openers. Some, you know, some of the yoga classes that I go to, they are very like more Pilates oriented, feel more like Pilates. They're like, okay, work now, yeah, okay, breathe, but also work. And with Yoga for Change specifically, we're very careful with any of the music that we play. If we even play music, we're very aware of different ways that it could potentially be triggering. So we work around that. But in other places, it's definitely possible to walk into a yoga class and walk out feeling kind of confused and disoriented from being triggered, especially if you have a background of trauma. If you do have trauma, I would definitely back what Jamie said, like bring a friend, because that's probably the safest way to go about it, in my opinion.
yeah. And we were saying the word triggered. I know sometimes the word triggered gets overused or incorrectly used. I have actually been in a yoga class where Megan has actually been triggered, where she is completely disoriented and not even connecting the fact that she's triggered. I think that's really a really important thing is, you know, if you don't feel secure enough to drive after a yoga class because you kind of feel like you're like everything is very, you know, maybe just sit down in your car and, you know, feel your hands and your feet and come back to your body just by breathing and stuff. And that's really, again, our recommendation and disclaimer for that. We have a lot of questions, guys. So hang on, we have a couple more. Okay, what is one goal you have for the future of Yoga for Change?
I am really excited about Yoga for Change's future. It was early 2014 when I first took a class, and I had no idea I would be this involved with the organization 6 years later. But, you know, COVID kind of put us in a position where we had to start, you know, looking at how can we provide yoga in different types of way. You know, when we stopped having the ability to be able to go in facilities. And so I'm really excited that this YouTube channel exists, that we're doing panels like this, that there's so much yoga that's accessible to people. You know, when people are coming out of rehab now, when they're, you know, coming out of incarceration or wherever they're at, community classes are great, but if you live in a rural place or you have issues with transportation, like Yoga for Change is like right there for you, like right when you need it. So it's really cool to see us kind of shift to, you know, the work really is inside the facilities. The work really is in those relationships. There's nothing that can replace that one-on-one contact. But as far as like scaling and having this accessible to more people, I really love the digital platform to be able to do that. And I really love like that to be also part of like the aftercare services of Yoga for Change is once you leave the physical classes, even if you move to Nebraska, like Yoga for Change is still there. It's just a couple clicks away.
That's awesome. Megan, what do you see for the future of Yoga for Change?
Um, I'm not really I'm not really sure what I see for the future of Yoga for Change, but I'm just excited to see where it goes. Because I know that it's ever changing. The more information that we get, the more scientific studies that are done that link trauma to movement to neural pathways, the more Yoga for Change changes to adapt to this new information. And it's such an exciting movement to be a part of. It's just exciting.
There you go. Okay, what is your most favorite or most memorable yoga class? Does not need to be Yoga for Change. That's put in there. Like, doesn't need to be a Yoga for Change class. But what is your most memorable or favorite yoga class memory?
My most memorable was the one that you took me to out at the beach. I think it was Big Fish Yoga, and it was hot yoga, and that was not something I had experienced in the gel, except for when we were in that trailer and it was just hot outside. But I like there was something to just like sweating, like to going through that class and like sweating. I remember feeling like all this like negative energy, just toxins just sweated out of my body, and it like felt so good. So it's not something I would do on a regular basis, but like I think if I felt like I need a good cleanse, like a good hot yoga class is a way to get that.
Yes. Megan?
So I can't remember like what the class was, and it's happened probably because it's happened a few times, but specifically in a hot yoga class. But it doesn't have to be a hot yoga class. Especially when I first started, there would always be that moment where I was like, this is stupid. I want to give up. I don't want to do this anymore. They don't even know I'm still in this posture. This is ridiculous. And then just on the other side of that, it's like, oh my gosh, I am so strong. I could do this for the rest of the day. And it's just that drastic shift from, oh, everything sucks to, no, you know what? Just breathe. It's okay. I can keep going. And then I felt strong and powerful.
Awesome. Megan, are you okay to go a couple minutes over?
I can.
All right, so I'm on other times. Thank you, Jamie, for pointing it out. We have a couple people saying thank you for sharing so authentically your stories, and I just want to echo that by saying thank you for so authentically sharing your stories. I'm really honored to continue in this awesome journey with you both. I think it's been really fun, and had you told me, Jamie, the first time I saw you that we would be doing this now, I probably would say, really, what's YouTube Live? To be honest with you, I'd be like, what's that? But at the same time, I'm super grateful that that's actually happening and that we're able to do this and create community change together. And Megan, same for you. I am honored to know you and to be on the same teaching team with you. And I think that it's been a lot of growth both for you and for me, and how we can, expand our work together. We have a lot of people are saying thank you. So thank you so much, both of you, for being on the call. Final question for me. If you could, in one word, describe the impact of Yoga for Change on your life, one word. And then Megan, don't like hyphenate it and do all your try to beat the system. One word or one sentence, one word to one sentence, whatever. Figure it out. What impact of Yoga for Change has had on you? What would it be?
I feel attacked. No.
My
Freedom.
answer is hyphenated, so go ahead, Megan.
That's fine. That's fine. Freedom?
Yes, freedom.
Good word. What about you, Jamie?
Mine was life-changing.
Freedom and life-changing.
Work, hyphenated words.
All right. Well, thank you everyone who tuned in to our YouTube live. We really appreciate your time, taking time from your day to learn more about our organization. Huge thank you to Jamie and Megan. Again, I'm super grateful to know you and to learn from you and to grow with you. Again, my name is Catherine Thomas.
Same.
Very well.
Hold on. We just need to pause and have a Catherine appreciation moment because
Yes.
we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. So,
Life
we're in our
changer.
lives, but we wouldn't be on this call right now.
I appreciate
And-
you. Yeah,
yeah.
you're right. I am facilitating, so yes, you would not be on the call except for me.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be in this position in life. You impacted my life in such a great way, and so as much as you appreciate, learn, and grow from us, I feel like I appreciate, learn, and grow from you as well. So,
Thanks, guys.
Same.
All right, for everyone watching, please join us next time we're live. It's gonna be next Wednesday. It will be with Betsy Dobbins, who is from the Children's Commission Center of Jacksonville, Florida. So she's amazing work with children and adverse child experiences and the community there. Please subscribe to our YouTube station. And we are very grateful for all of you tuning in. Yes, subscribe on wherever the button is, like it's somewhere. All right, have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, everyone. Thank you.